Captain Ibrahim Traore is a name that echoes throughout Burkina Faso, resonating in the hearts and minds of its people. He is a young military officer with a strong will and an unyielding determination to bring about change. Traore rose to prominence in a time of deep crisis for his nation, becoming a beacon of hope for many. Burkina Faso was grappling with poverty, insecurity, and the long shadow of French colonialism, challenges that seemed insurmountable. Traore saw the suffering of his people firsthand, witnessing their daily struggles and hardships. He believed in a different path, a future free from external control and oppression. Traore's background is modest. He was not born into wealth or privilege, but his humble beginnings shaped his perspective. His upbringing instilled in him a deep connection to the everyday struggles of the Burkinabe people, fostering a sense of empathy and responsibility. He joined the military, seeking to serve his country and protect its citizens from the threats they faced. Traore's experiences in the military, particularly in the fight against terrorism, solidified his convictions and his resolve to make a difference. He saw firsthand the devastating impact of instability and foreign interference, which fueled his desire for a sovereign and stable Burkina Faso. Traore's message resonated with many, especially the youth, who saw in him a leader who could bring about real change. They were tired of the old ways, the systems that seemed to benefit only a select few, leaving the majority in despair. They yearned for a leader who understood their struggles, who would fight for their future and the future of their nation. Traore, with his unwavering commitment to Burkina Faso's sovereignty and well-being, emerged as a beacon of hope for a brighter future. His rise to prominence might have seemed sudden to outsiders, but to those within the nation, it was a long-awaited emergence. However, it was the culmination of years of simmering frustration and a deep-seated desire for change that had been building up. Traore embodied the spirit of a nation on the cusp of transformation, ready to claim its rightful place on the world stage and forge a new path forward. Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, found itself teetering on the precipice of chaos. Despite promises of reform and a return to stability, the nation seemed to slip further into turmoil. The threat of terrorism loomed large, casting a pall over daily life. Attacks by extremist groups escalated, claiming the lives of innocent civilians and sowing seeds of fear and distrust. Damiba's government seemed powerless to stem the tide of violence. The security forces, despite their best efforts, were outmatched and outmaneuvered. The people felt abandoned, their pleas for help going unanswered. Frustration grew with each passing day, and whispers of discontent began to echo through the streets. Within the military, a sense of urgency grew. Captain Ibrahim Traore, known for his bravery and strategic mind, emerged as a leading voice of dissent. He believed that a change in leadership was necessary to save the nation from collapse. Traore and his allies, united in their concern for Burkina Faso's future, decided to act. The coup itself was swift and decisive. Damiba's government was overthrown, and Traore emerged as the new leader of Burkina Faso. The nation held its breath, caught between hope and uncertainty. Traore's actions were a gamble, a desperate attempt to pull Burkina Faso back from the brink. Only time would tell if his gamble would pay off. Captain Traore, in a move that reverberated throughout Africa and beyond, made the momentous decision to end French military presence in Burkina Faso. For decades, France had maintained a significant military footprint in its former colony. This presence, while ostensibly aimed at supporting stability and security, had become a point of contention. Many Burkinabe citizens, including Traore, viewed the French troops not as protectors but as a vestige of a colonial past they were trying to shed. The presence of French soldiers on their soil was a constant reminder of a power imbalance they were determined to rectify. Traore believed that true sovereignty necessitated taking control of their own destiny, including their own security. The decision to expel the French troops was not made lightly. Traore understood the risks involved, the potential for further instability and economic repercussions. However, he was resolute in his belief that Burkina Faso could no longer be beholden to its former colonizer. The move was met with mixed reactions internationally. Western powers, particularly France, condemned the decision, expressing concerns about the security vacuum it would create. However, across Africa, Traore's actions were met with a wave of support. His bold stance resonated with nations that had experienced the lingering effects of colonialism and were yearning for true independence. Section 4. new alliances looking east for partnership and support. With the departure of French forces, Captain Traoré set about forging new alliances, seeking partnerships that respected Burkina Faso's sovereignty and shared its vision for the future. He understood that the nation's path forward required a fresh approach, one that would break away from the traditional dependencies and foster genuine collaboration. He turned his gaze eastwards towards nations like Russia and China, who offered a different model of engagement, one based on mutual respect and non-interference in internal affairs. This shift was not just strategic but also ideological, reflecting a broader desire for a more balanced global influence. Russia, with its growing influence on the African continent, emerged as a key partner for Traoré's Burkina Faso. The relationship was built on shared interests and a common vision for a multipolar world. Moscow offered military support, providing training and equipment to bolster Burkina Faso's armed forces. This support was crucial in enhancing the country's defense capabilities and ensuring its security. This partnership was not simply about military hardware, it represented a strategic alignment, a shared desire to challenge the existing world order dominated by Western powers. It was a bold statement of independence and self-determination. China, too, saw an opportunity to strengthen ties with Burkina Faso. The Asian giant's approach was multifaceted, encompassing economic, political, and cultural dimensions. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, with its focus on infrastructure development and economic cooperation, resonated with Traoré's vision for a more prosperous and self-reliant Burkina Faso. The initiative promised to bring much-needed development to the region. Chinese investment flowed into the country, funding projects in sectors like energy, transportation, and telecommunications. These investments were pivotal in driving economic growth and improving the quality of life for the people of Burkina Faso. These new alliances were not merely a pragmatic response to the shifting geopolitical landscape. They represented a conscious break from the traditional power structures that had long constrained Burkina Faso. It was a deliberate move towards a more diversified and resilient foreign policy. Traoré's willingness to look beyond the West for partnership and support was a testament to his belief in a multipolar world, where nations like Burkina Faso could chart their own course. This vision was about creating a future where the country could stand on its own terms, free from the shadows of former colonial powers. Section 5. Towards economic independence, breaking free from French control. Captain Traoré understood that true sovereignty extended beyond political and military independence. It required economic self-reliance. He inherited an economy shackled by colonial legacies, heavily reliant on France and vulnerable to external shocks. Traoré embarked on an ambitious plan to break free from these constraints, seeking to diversify Burkina Faso's economic partnerships and empower local industries. A key target of Traoré's reforms was the CFA franc, a currency shared by several former French colonies in West Africa. Critics argued that the CFA franc, with its fixed exchange rate to the euro and France's control over monetary policy, hindered economic growth and perpetuated dependency. Traoré's government explored the possibility of withdrawing from the CFA franc zone, seeking greater control over its own monetary policy. Beyond currency reform, Traoré focused on harnessing Burkina Faso's natural resources for the benefit of its people. The country is rich in gold, but for years, much of the profits from gold mining flowed out of the country, enriching multinational corporations while leaving local communities impoverished. Traoré's government sought to renegotiate mining contracts, demanding a greater share of the revenue and prioritizing local employment. They also encouraged the development of downstream industries, aiming to add value to Burkina Faso's raw materials within the country, creating jobs and boosting the economy. Section 6. A leader maligned. Western media's portrayal of Traoré. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's rise to power and his defiant stance against French neocolonialism did not sit well with everyone. His leadership style and the circumstances of his ascent were scrutinized heavily. Western media outlets in their coverage of Burkina Faso often portrayed Traoré in a negative light, painting him as an autocratic leader with questionable allegiances. This portrayal was consistent across various platforms from newspapers to television broadcasts. This narrative, often lacking nuance and context, served to undermine Traoré's legitimacy and sow seeds of doubt about his intentions. The complexity of Burkina Faso's political landscape was often reduced to simplistic and misleading headlines. One of the main criticisms leveled against Traoré was his alleged authoritarianism. Critics pointed to his military background and his swift consolidation of power as evidence of his autocratic tendencies. Western media outlets highlighted his military background and his consolidation of power, neglecting to mention the circumstances under which he came to power, a nation in crisis, desperate for leadership. The dire situation in Burkina Faso was often glossed over. They accused him of suppressing dissent and cracking down on opposition, often without providing concrete evidence to support these claims. These accusations were frequently based on unverified reports and hearsay. Another line of attack focused on Traoré's relationship with Russia. His diplomatic engagements with Moscow were portrayed as a betrayal of Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Western media outlets, eager to portray Russia as a malign actor on the world stage, painted Traoré's partnership with Moscow in a sinister light. This narrative fit neatly into the broader geopolitical tensions between the West and Russia. They accused him of being a puppet of the Kremlin, of selling out Burkina Faso's sovereignty to a foreign power. These accusations were often sensationalized to fit a particular narrative. These narratives, while appealing to a Western audience accustomed to viewing Africa through a particular lens, often ignored the realities on the ground in Burkina Faso. The voices of ordinary Burkinabe were rarely heard. They failed to capture the complexities of the situation, reducing a multifaceted story to a simplistic binary of good versus evil. This reductionist approach did a disservice to the nuanced reality of Burkina Faso's political and social landscape.